Welcome back to another Cardinals Off Day podcast. We are joining you on a very unusual Saturday off day, which I did learn is because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are playing a football game in like the same parking lot where the Tampa Bay Rays stadium is this year. So that's why there's no game today, because the NFL supersedes the MLB. But lucky for our listeners, that means that you get to listen to myself, Ben Godar, and my good friend Ben Humphrey. Ben, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I've got to tell you, Ben, I think that it might have helped raise attendance to have it as like a tailgating site before the Buccaneers game. Like, I would have just bumped it up.
Yeah.
And like
Right.
done like $5 tickets and seen how many Buccaneers fans I could get to show up early, drink beer at the Cardinals Rays game, and then just leave for the football game.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe they, perhaps the union, Ben. Maybe the union has something in there that says, you know what, we can't share a parking lot with a football game. So that could be the case.
You're right. That's very fair. But like, I mean,
whatever the reason.
But like watching these Marlins and Rays, and I mean the A's are also included in this group. Like, no one goes. So like,
Right.
I feel like you've got to have more of like the minor league
Yeah.
huckster mentality, where like all these people are
Right.
going to be in our parking lot that no one uses. How
Yeah.
can we get them into the game? You know.
Yeah. No, it's a good question. It's a good question, but where the big money is involved, logic does not always follow. But you will find logic here on this show, I think. At least we hope so. And so, Ben, to that end, since we last joined folks, what have you learned?
I have learned that Oliver Marmol is not worried about losing his job as St. Louis Cardinals manager. Do not print in the paper that Oliver Marmol is worried about losing his job as the St. Louis Cardinals manager. And it really began with the Yadier Molina invitation, where he went out of his way to be like, I invited Oliver Marmol, manager of the St. Louis Cardinals, me. I invited Yadier Molina here, me, because I am secure in my manhood and in my job. But then you read his quote. He's like, he knows so much the players will improve just by him being here for 2 days. And Ben, if you take the next step in that logic, you look at Ollie and you're like, well, then why are you here? Like, if that presence is so beneficial to everyone, shouldn't he be here every day and you not be? And then he had, the Cardinals got a little bit of national attention because they played the Yankees, and Ken Rosenthal was in town, and he did the interview with Marmol that they printed verbatim in The Athletic. Like, Ken Rosenthal literally acted as his stenographer. And like Marmol, he asked Marmol about like his standing, and Marmol was like, I could give two shits. That's the most genuine way I can put it. And people around me know, like, I'm being honest. I'm like, bro, if you're swearing to the National Reporter about how much you don't care and aren't worried about it, you are worried about it. And frankly, he should be, because I think there's a pretty high percentage that Bloom decides after next season they need to go in a different direction.
So, Ben, you learned that the lady doth protest too much.
Exactly.
Sort of what you learned.
Yes.
Yeah.
I put my Hamlet cap on, and kind of, when I've seen Hamlet live, they kind of stroke their chin when they say that, and that was
this is a radio medium, but I can let folks know Ben is stroking his chin as if in deep thought right now.
Methinks he doth protest too much. So yes, I have concluded that Oliver Marmol is in fact deeply concerned about his standing as St. Louis Cardinals manager, and frankly, he probably should be. That is what I have learned. What about you, Ben?
Well, I have learned that Quinn Matthews is back, baby, kind of at least. So I've been keeping a little bit of an eye on Quinn Matthews, and by that I mean mostly looking at the stat lines. But since August 1st, there's been just a sizable jump kind of in his performance, and it looks very different. So he's had 4 starts in the month of August. He's averaging just under 6 innings per start. He's only averaging 2 walks per start, and actually in 3 of those 4 games, he only walked 1 batter. And Ben, as you recall, that was really the thing that just went haywire for him, kind of in and around that injury he had earlier this season. Is he was suddenly just walking everybody. So the walks are way down, and he's still striking out an average of 7.5 batters over those like 6 innings. So he's really kind of looking basically Quinn Matthews-y again. So I think that's exciting. At this point, just as I try to suss out the narrative of his season, he had an injury and he was pretty bad around the time of that injury. So I would assume that a lot of the poor performance was, kind of battling that injury. But makes me optimistic for him. I think it still puts him in the mix for next season, and we're going to talk some more things pitching later on. So that is what I have learned, Ben. We have a bunch of questions today, and I would think we were kind of pleasantly surprised to see that because, we're at that time of the year where it's not as fun maybe to be watching the St. Louis Cardinals, but we appreciate so many listeners sending us their questions. So let's kick things off with friend of the pod, C70, Daniel Shoptaw, host of Meet Me at Musial, and other podcasts, blogs, Substacks, etc. C70 on the Cardinals Discord says, for the next show, what do you think things are like for Mo right now? Not snarky or sarcastically, but what do you think he's in charge of? Is it just roster management? And if so, why has he been slow to actually manage the roster? And there's a second part to his question, but let's maybe just take that first part first. Ben, what do you think things are like for Mo right now?
I don't think he has a lot on his plate. I would honestly even be surprised if he's not at least collaborating with Bloom on every roster move at this point in time, because they've packed it in, and most of what they're doing should be about next year more than this year. And to Daniel's point about hey, maybe they should actually manage the roster, I think that, and whether it's Mozeliak or he's overly deferential to the managers, I think the Cardinals for years now have had a problem where they seem to wait too long to pull the trigger on putting players on the IL. And they seem to play shorthanded for extended period of time.
Not as long as the Cubs, though, apparently.
Apparently not. But the most recent run of it was, I just thought, particularly egregious because there's no reason to be playing that shorthanded where you basically have one bench bat that you can go to. Like you're really hamstringing your manager and your team. And at that point in time, you're multiple days into the injury. It's going to be retroactive to the last game after the last game they played. And so, then you're talking about, you're going to get, say, 2 days and then +8. But in that interim, you put Donovan on the IL, what's going to happen? You're going to get Sajacy plate appearances, you're going to get Gorman plate appearances. They need to get guys at bats, and so I don't, now they have Church up for Victor Scott. It just really doesn't make any sense to me because they can fill in the gaps with the flexibility that they have. Fill in those gaps with players who they want to get plate appearances. So why are you having Brendan Donovan, your most valuable trade piece, play hurt or not play and hamstring the team? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There's definitely some once you have the full picture of some of these situations, it's kind of like, well, why didn't this happen days earlier? But I guess jumping back to Daniel's question, just thinking about Mo's day to day, I do think that as much as the change from general manager to president of baseball operations, which happens in St. Louis and has kind of happened throughout baseball, some of that is just kind of classic title inflation, right? Yeah. But at the same time, I do believe that he does oversee a large business that does a lot of things, so there's a lot of employees that work not just in the front office, but there's stadium staff, there's all this kind of stuff. They own properties all around the country. They have all these other things. So Honestly, I would guess that we all underestimate how much of his time is spent on that always, because we're really only interested in the part that's spent on kind of like player development and stuff. So my guess is that yeah, maybe his role in player development is somewhat changing, or perhaps essentially he's kind of delegating more of that than previously, to kind of Bloom and others. But my guess is kind of his day to day is still a lot of like looking at a spreadsheet on how much revenue the parking ramps are bringing in, and like stuff like that I think does kind of cross his desk as well. So that's not a very interesting answer, but I think that's what the answer might be. Second part of Daniel's question, he says, also listening to the last show and your comments about you might have come off harsh on Tommy Edman. I think that's a fair statement, as I often wondered exactly when Mr. Edman had run over Mr. Humphrey's dog. So, Ben, care to respond to the dog running over allegations?
Well, let me assure you, if Tommy Edman had run over one of our family's dogs, people would be looking for Tommy Edman and might not be able to find him. No.
Ben, is that true for both of your dogs or just one?
Both of them. They have.
Okay.
For folks who don't know, we have like a 75-pounder with really long legs, and we have like a 40-pounder with about 4-inch legs. That's like a Heinz Fit 57. I don't even know what he is, but he can jump like 4 feet in the air. So he's probably got some Jack Russell Terrier in him. And he's the newest one, and he's quite the snuggler. And all of the children, especially our 2-year-old, love the dog. So Tommy Edman would have to deal with a grumpy Papa Bear if he did that. But with Edman, Ben, I feel like we have always been pretty clear, right? Like Edman has value as a utility player who can play above average defense at multiple positions. He can hit left-handed pitching very well, and when the club is facing a left-handed starter, he should start and bat high in the order. And when they are facing a right-handed starter, they don't need to bend over backwards to put him in the starting lineup because he's not very good against right-handed pitching. And I think we also tended to bristle at Edman having a good season by defensive metrics at a position, and then the St. Louis media establishment acting like he's the best shortstop in baseball or the best center fielder in baseball, when in fact he's not the second coming of Ozzie Smith or Jim Edmonds. And everything that has happened since those seasons where he was very good over a limited sample size have shown that to be true. Like his true talent wasn't that high. And so it was more of a, he is a good player who has value, but we don't need to pretend like he is even an all-star, because he's not. And so I'm very glad that Dodgers fans are finding that out this year, with the way he's put his season together.
Well, I mean, I will say he started off with that really hot start with like lots of home runs, and I think just we kind of expect. He seems like he's really in the wheelhouse of guys that the Dodgers unlock something for, being, kind of a scrappy second baseman type. So I sort of fully expected, him to have like a, 9 WAR season and, you and I to, be humiliated. But no, he's having kind of exactly the same season there that he did here. So I think that kind of, I think that backs.
He is who we thought he was. He is who we thought he was, and he always has been. And also, by the way, we've also consistently said, we recommended the, the Ringer article when he got called up and they interviewed all his family who went to that opening series. I think it was against the Mets in New York. Wonderful article. And we recommended, and everyone should actually still go back and listen to this, the Sports Info Solutions podcast with his interview about fielding. One of the better interviews. Also, that podcast is really good just generally, listening to guys talk about fielding. But I thought Edman had one of the better appearances on that. So I would also, again, recommend for a second time, folks check those out because they're really good. But now he is on the hated Dodgers, so everyone can join us or maybe everyone has swung to the more negative side on him from us, Ben, since he's on the Dodgers. What do you think that might be it?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I just haven't given Tommy that much thought.
No, I've been very interested in his lack of stolen bases. So if anyone has anything about the Dodgers' approach to stolen bases generally, or Edmund in particular, please pass it along because I'd be interested in knowing, how he goes to a highly successful base stealer with the Cardinals, like 25 to 30 bags a year to 3 stolen bases this year and 4 attempts for the Dodgers. That seems weird to me. And so if any of our listeners out there have any insight, please feel free to share it. I would love to learn more about that. Moving on, we have DeWalt Inspector. And he says, not sure what is worse, the play on the field this weekend or the management, with at least a mathematical shot at the wild card, getting super cute, and playing with a 24-man roster. I'm not sure Bloom will be enough to turn this mess around. We may need an exorcist, or Miles Michaelis with Sage. That was my editorializing, folks. Are we looking at 2030 to get back on track?
Well, I think he's right about some of the things that are frustrating and disappointing right now, and I think it's possible, but I still think that this team is probably lined up to be competitive in 2027, and I think next year could even be kind of a surprise competitive year, because again the Cardinals with their sort of like what has been their kind of like compete every year philosophy. One kind of benefit of that is, they the teams that do the like win now rebuild thing, like when they're at the end of the win now, there's nothing to rebuild with. They have like bad contracts. The Cardinals don't really have that, so it's just kind of a question of how long it's going to take enough of their player development pieces to blossom, and then when management is willing to spend to supplement that with some free agents. I think that's probably honestly the bigger question, just because of the real financial downturn in terms of ticket revenue and broadcast rights and things like that. So I still think they have a good shot to be competitive in 2027. Ben, what about you?
I agree. I think if they are not competitive until after Mason Wynn leaves as a free agent, we're in trouble. And that presupposes that he doesn't sign an extension. But I think when you look at, I think Wynn's a core player. I think obviously a core player, and that skill up the middle with what Weatherholt looks like he might be, and he might be the second baseman of the future. And I think Victor Scott the second, whose offense has really fallen off, but his defense is so good. If he can improve that offense, you look at that profile up the middle, and then the catchers coming up, like that is a very strong core, and I don't think that's a core that you are waiting 5 years for to be competitive. That's strong. That's a strong up the middle club that you can either supplement with players from within the organization or outside. And I think they will be competing. They're also in the NL Central, right? Like, let's keep that in mind. So I feel like they will be competing well in advance of 2030, no matter how frustrating the recent run of games have been.
All right, Guth Sports over on Blue Sky asks, who will be in the 2026 rotation? Who will be in the 2027 rotation? Who could be the worst possible choice to fill the gaps? And why will it be Miles Michaelis? Ben, I did scratch out my answer to this because I wanted to make sure I had some names. But what do you think? Do you have thoughts on these two, 2026 and 2027?
Let me just say that if I were Chaim Bloom, you mentioned Matthews, right? And if I were Bloom, I would have my first press conference be announcing that they released Miles Michaelis and that Quinn Matthews will be starting in place of him for his next start. And I would do that. Whether it is the last week of the season, for the last 2 weeks of the season, last 3, if I were Bloom, that's what I would do. And
Yeah.
the amount of goodwill you would earn with that, I feel like it will carry him through the end of his contract. As to the question though, about who will be starting for the St. Louis Cardinals next year, I think Matthews, assuming he ends healthy, is in the starting rotation on opening day. It's just a question of whether or not they get his feet wet at the end of the season this year, in my opinion. I think Palante and McGreevy will be in the rotation. Um, and I believe that they are going to go out and sign just some filler. I mean, it's going to be like Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn,
Well,
in my opinion, like that type of free agent
well,
profile.
well. You've also got Liberatore and you've got Gray, and so I think next year is fairly set. Gray is in his final guaranteed year. And then I think you've got Liberatore. I'm with you. Palante is ARB2, but I think he's played well enough. They'll keep him around. McGreevy's pre-ARB. He's definitely in there. So that gives you 4. So I really think it's the 5 that becomes a question. And Ben, I kind of penciled in Quinn Matthews / journeyman / Liam Doyle. And I feel like that's what they're going to kind of roll with. I really think they will sign like, 2 weeks into spring training, they will sign a terrible pitcher, like a terrible 38-year-old pitcher who's still unsigned, but they know can give them innings. As you said, a Kyle Gibson, type, right? Just because they'll need him for backup, if nothing else. But I think those are 3 kind of viable paths for him there. If Quinn Matthews is ready to go almost from the jump, that's great. I think Liam Doyle, they might anticipate could be ready to pitch during the season, but they're not going to guarantee, count on that. So, I think between those 3, that probably gives them that number 5 there. Now they don't really have much beyond that, which again is a kind of a continuing problem. So, maybe maybe they sign even another minor league free agent or something.
And I should also say I think they're going to try very hard to get Sonny Gray to agree to leave. There's a part, I know that he said he wanted to stay, and I really like Sonny Gray. I don't want him to go. But when you look at just looking at the stands and, the FanDuel Midwest streaming app experience, I feel like revenue's probably below projections. And I feel like they're going to sit down with Wilson Contreras. They're going to sit down with Sonny Gray. They're going to do their level best to clear some of that veteran cost. And I think Gray is probably the most valuable guy that they have. And I think they're going to make a push to do that. And Liberatore's, I know that, and we have talked about this ad nauseum on this podcast, and I don't want to dwell on it, his inconsistency with the fastball and how it's fallen off, and we've talked about how that was probably going to happen. But I'm genuinely worried that there's just something health-wise going on.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm not too worried about that. And Ben, I actually thought one of your best predictions of the season was, from very early on, saying, Liberatore's never had this kind of a workload. And so for me, I really kind of feel like that's all we're seeing is just that, he kind of hit that workload thing. So I'd say I'm reasonably optimistic on him going into next year that, he had a much, took a big step forward this year, got tired out, but hopefully kind of built himself up a little more. So, see even more out of him.
And
next
his
year.
Quotes are 100% in line with what you're saying. I'm being completely irrational where I'm just kind of looking at it and I'm like,
it's never irrational to wonder if a pitcher is hurt.
But I'm just I'm kind of this just does not feel right.
Yeah.
And I don't it's gotten to the point where I think I am uncomfortable with it. And it is now causing my imagination to maybe roam where it shouldn't.
Yeah. Ben, I'm going to start. He asked about 2027 as well, so I just wanted to kind of touch on that. So Sonny Gray, should he stick around next year? The team does have a $30 million club option on him for 2027. Ben's shaking his head no. I think probably not too. Andre Palante would be ARB3. Honestly, the way he's going, I don't know that he's going to make it to 2027, so I could see him exiting. But, I would say, and again, some of these guys are going to be injured too, so it's a little silly to do this exercise because we know that. But but I think Liberatore is still around. Liberatore will be ARB2. McGreevy's still pre-ARB. He's definitely there. And then by 2027, I think you can pencil in both Matthews and Doyle.
Yeah.
So that gives you 4 right there with if Palante is out, and then I think what becomes interesting there is if they've shown enough in 2026, then I think that's a place where they go out and they make an acquisition, or possibly, Ben, they even look at that Sonny Gray 1-year thing. If he's maintained a high, if they basically want that to be their free agent move is Sonny Gray at $30 million. But that's the kind of thing that I think we could see them do in 2027 if things have progressed the way they would like, and they feel like we are, going to be competitive this year. And that's a much more exciting proposition, I would say. You've got that's 4 homegrown guys, and then maybe you go out and you acquire a quality arm. That feels sustainable in a way that these 5 middling 30-year-old free agents that we've signed has just not been sustainable.
Here's something that I have heard a lot of the St. Louis media establishment throw out, and I want to see what your thoughts are on it, Ben. And it's Kyle Leahy. They keep bringing up his arsenal of pitches and how it can play up as a starter, and they would be surprised if he does not show up at camp next year, competing for the rotation. Do you think there are any legs to that?
I think I might have mentioned this on an episode a little while back, because there was one weekend in particular where it definitely popped up in multiple places. It doesn't make any sense at all to me, because I looked it up and I don't think he had started at all since 2023, and only a little bit then, and he's 30, I think, right? And so you just, you don't see that. You don't see teams go that direction with a player like that. And so I don't understand. So it seems super unlikely to me. The one thing that makes it weird is when you hear kind of multiple media people saying it, you do wonder if they are legitimately hearing that from somewhere, inside the organization. And, if they believe that, and that's something they can execute, that would be a pretty cool thing. So I'm not saying it can't happen. It would be an innovative and cool thing if it does, but it's very unlikely given just kind of history. So
yeah, but it's like Todd Wellemeyer or Braden Looper. Part of it, part of it is when it's the guys or the folks who have been around covering the Cardinals long enough that they were there for this. It makes me wonder if they've just got a Dave Duncan, Tony La Russa mad scientist hangover, where Dave Duncan just watches Braden Looper throw 5 sinkers and is he could start,
Yeah. But all pitchers were bad back. There were 5 good pitchers and everybody else was bad back then. So the difference between a bad starter and a reliever was not what it is now. So.
All right. Electric Blue asks on Blue Sky, remember how cool it was to have a catcher opposing teams were scared to run against? Not much of a question, just remembering how great that was.
Yes, I do remember. That was great. I think that's one of the many things that we all miss about Yachty. Ben, anything you want to add about Yachty?
I would add that we need to grade the current catchers on a curve because they changed the rules.
Yes, and that's a very good point.
And it's not fair to compare them to Yadier Molina, who did not have to play with the new rules. And I would be fascinated to see peak Yadier Molina with these rules. What does that mean? But that's a that's a what if that we'll never know the answer to.
Yeah. Yeah, very true, very true. All right, we got two questions here that kind of go together. And Ben, exciting, Dr. Jacob, who we had a question from last time, and I wondered, is this a real doctor? Says, yes, I am a real doctor. Regarding Nootbaar's injury was so predictable, and until his July injured list stint, he played in 88 of the first 96 games, including both games of all 6 doubleheaders the Cardinals played. Come on, Ollie, know your guys. Whatever the opposite of runway is, maybe walkway. That's what Nootbaar should have been on. He needs rest. And then Cole Morris says, so I understand that the Cardinals season is over and that they're not making the playoffs, but if Nootbaar is back from injury, what is Burleson doing in left field? So both these questions kind of about basically how they've used both Burleson and Nootbaar. Ben, what do you have to say?
The Nootbaar thing is what I'm going to start off on because it is directly in our wheelhouse as people who have consistently said the Cardinals don't have a lot of 600 plate appearance guys, and they need to embrace that and have more like 450 to 500 plate appearance guys. And I think Lars Nootbaar fits that bill with his injury history. And you know what I think back to, Ben, with Nootbaar is like back in late May on Marmal's radio show, I think it was Tom Ackerman asked him about how Nolan Gorman wasn't getting any playing time. And Marmal just like in a total asshole voice was like, well, who would you bench? you know, and Ackerman's like, well, I'm not advocating that anyone else play over him or, you know, that you sit anyone to play Gorman. I'm just asking about what your like view is of him. And you know, then he was like, he's going to get like 300 to 350 plate appearances, and that's enough. And you know, when I was listening to that, I was like, you're playing Lars Nootbaar too much. and you know, like I feel like you can get Nootbaar more days off and Nolan Gorman more days in the lineup and not lose a lot. And of course, Nootbaar has been bad for actually since about that interview, and Nolan Gorman has been very good. And you know, with Nootbaar's injury history, it just doesn't make any sense. I just do not understand why you seem to be making a point of benching Nolan Gorman when you needed to handle Lars Nootbaar a little bit more delicately as a manager. And I think it was very poorly handled by Marmal, and I totally agree with the premise of the question. I mean, what are your thoughts, Ben?
Yeah. Well, so Ben, I looked this up today actually, and it's a very interesting moment as this question was asked to us, kind of about these two players, because as of we're recording this on Thursday night, so it'll be a little bit different as people are hearing this. But as we sit here today, Ben, Lars Nootbaar has 443 plate appearances this season. Alec Burleson has 446, so the same. They are both have exactly 1.4 wins above replacement. So like they've played the same amount, they've been worth the same, you know, kind of to the team. Lars Nootbaar has a 104 weighted runs created plus. Alec Burleson has a 120 weighted runs created plus. Obviously, the difference is Nootbaar has better, you know, defensive and base running value, which should not come as a surprise to anyone. So, kind of, I guess, maybe getting more into the second part of the question about, like, why is Burleson playing, and of course Nootbaar has been playing now. It's actually been Jordan Walker who's probably had a little bit less time, out there maybe. I think that, I think both of these guys are like, 2-win players, like, maybe like 3-win players on kind of a good year. I think that's just kind of what we've seen. And so those are guys that, like, you can have some of those guys on your team. That's kind of like league average-ish, right? But you can't build your whole team out of that. So, I think they've kind of established that, that's the value level that these kind of guys bring. Nootbaar, I know we see those flashes where he's just playing at like a really high rate, but I just keep comparing him to, oh my God, who's the muscular Canadian? Why am I totally blanking on his name?
O'Neill?
Oh yeah, Tyler O'Neill. Oh man, just because Nootbaar just he can't stay healthy, and I understand you and the questioner saying, well, yeah, he played a lot of games, but like there's no example of a season where Lars Nootbaar has been healthy. So I don't know that. I agree it would have been better to give him rest, and I think we could have seen a better result. But every season he's had injury where he's on the injured list, or he's had injury where he kind of hangs around and his play is at a like lower level. So I'm just, and he's 27 years old now. I think like Tyler O'Neill, he's just one of these guys that he's not going to be able to give you that kind of full healthy season. And Alec Burleson, obviously we know his limitations, like pretty good hitter. He did this year. I mean, what he's done against left-handed pitching is kind of remarkable this year. He's currently 99 weighted runs created plus against left-handed pitching, which is just fine, and then he's like 126 against right-handed pitching. So he's gotten over that kind of platoon only thing, but he's a defensive liability wherever you put him. His defense actually has improved this year. I looked it up. He's at -3 outs above average as an outfielder this year. Last year he was at -9 outs above average in the outfield. He had slightly more innings, but the year before he had -7 at even fewer innings than he has now. So he's definitely like, the outfield play is better. So it's it's bad, but it's not like unplayable bad. So going forward, I don't know. I think it's maybe has a little bit to do with what kind of Bloom feels like he's looking for. These guys both feel like they could be pieces on a team, but I don't think either one of them seems like a core piece of a team, and I don't think either one of them seems like a critical, like, oh, you have to hold on to this guy to build a winning team. Ben, I don't know, what do you think?
Oh, I agree. And if with the question of if Nootbaar is available, why is Burleson playing in the outfield? I think that's a great question, because he's still like he's bad. I know that Chip Carey and Brad Thompson pretend that he's like serviceable now, but he's not. He is still a bad outfielder, and that's really what.
Well, but he hit. I mean, his bat is good, and I disagree, Ben. I guess because his bat's good enough that it makes sense to have him in the lineup.
Against a righty, maybe. Like I don't like if you're league average and you're that bad in the outfield. If you're a 99 weighted runs created plus true, let's just call it 100. Your league average. Yeah. Against lefties, like you're not good enough to play against a lefty. I guess you could maybe justify it against righties, but it's also if he's not hitting, he hurts you on the bases and he hurts you in the field, and so like I just look at him and I'm like, he is a left-handed bench bat on a good team, like on a playoff, like on a World Series team.
Yeah.
And like, so why are you even trying? Like, you should just trade him, because his career is not what it is here. He's either going to be like a starter on bad teams like the Cardinals, or a complimentary player on good teams. And, if you're the Cardinals, he's getting more expensive. I just like, I don't see any reason to get him plate appearances down the stretch this year. And I think they should trade him as soon as they can. And I find him mildly amusing, but like, his whole gimmick of DJ Brilly Biscuits, but, it would probably be more fun as a complimentary piece and, bench personality on a good team, than on this Cardinals team. All right. Moving on, Mink River asks via Blue Sky, I watched Skip and Brad recently. I know they don't get much love from Cards Off Day. They talked about Skip's OCD in the kitchen, how awesome both their wives are, Brad's 2 dogs and their sleeping habits, their favorite Philly restaurants, we weren't playing Philly, and Brad's nightly shin pain. Aaron Frey on Blue Sky says, need your thoughts on the next pod about the number 19 ranking for Chip and Brad, if only because it'll lead to a rant about Chip's use of RISP. And the number 19 ranking is Awful Announcing every year does a ranking of the MLB local broadcasting booths. And the Cardinals came in at 19th this year after placing in the 20s each of the last couple of years. And so, Ben, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think mostly these folks are teeing you up because they want to hear you talk about how much you hate the broadcast, Ben. I think that's what's happening.
I think you're right.
But I am going to I'm going to push back and I'm going to try to articulate why. So if you bear with me for a moment, I feel like there's kind of two modes of most kind of folks in the booth, right? There's your some of them are like your game watching buddies, right? And they're just like pleasant people to be watching the game with. So like Pat Hughes and Ron Coomer, who do the Cubs radio, I enjoy listening to their radio broadcast. They are just game watching buddies, right? Like I don't think Ron Coomer knows his ass from a hole in the ground, right? But they don't necessarily purport to know more than that. They're just kind of pleasant voices while you're watching. Then you got the people who try to do like analysis while they're in there, and this is your like John Smoltz, right? This is your Joe Morgan, and frankly, this is like your Danny Mac, which I've said was kind of what bothered me about Danny Mac was from the play-by-play chair, kind of wanting to do that. So I'm going to say that like some of this is a taste thing, but Ben, I honestly prefer your game watching buddies thing to analysis. Are there some analysts who are like, good enough that I'm interested? Yes. But honestly, I just rather have the kind of game watching buddies. And I'll tell you this, Ben, I prefer Brad Thompson to Mark Sweeney. And I would agree that Mark Sweeney does some pretty good analysis, both when he's in the booth and when he comes when he's like back in the studio, as well as when he's in the booth. But like, I find him kind of dull, and I do kind of enjoy Brad a little bit more. So I can live with their more like game watching buddies vibe. Now, I know you've referred to it as a clown show, and I think that's fair. and do I think that they're like particularly like funny or like, interesting? Of course I don't, but I don't think Pat Hughes and Ron Coomer are either. So like, I have trouble articulating this because it's like, I'm defending a thing that I don't think is good, but I'm defending a thing that I don't really think is supposed to be good, Ben. It's like, it's like if you went to a Rotary Club meeting and then you were complaining about how dull the small talk was. Like, that's what it's supposed to be. That's what it is, right? And so that's kind of where I come from with them. Like, I'm not, I don't love it, but it doesn't grate on me nearly to the way that it grates on you. So seeing them go from like the 20s up to like 19, like that, I mean, that feels about right to me. Like, Ben, have at it.
I have actually grown to hate them both this year. Brad Thompson has his creepy Chucky the homicidal doll from the movies eyes. Like, he has the eyes of the Chucky doll. And his shtick is like an uncle you like.
Yes.
Which is fine. But when you have to listen to it for 3 hours every night, it's too much. And and then when you pair him, this is the real problem, is when you put him together with Chip Carey, who is a clown and has no respect for himself. He has no respect for the job. He has no respect for the city, the team, or any of us listening at home. He is just a disgrace. And he could not be fired quickly enough. And he is lucky that when I saw him walking into Busch Stadium this year, I was with my children. Because if I had been alone, I would have heckled him. And I would have told him these things about how terrible he is at his job. And because I think he needs to hear it. Someone needs to tell him how awful he is at his job and how embarrassing it is, like, for the organization. Or at least it should be. I don't know if anyone at the organization even cares at this point in time. But, like, he wears the red glasses. He puts on the hat. But, like, he also brings absolutely nothing to the broadcast. Like, there is no one in Major League Baseball who he is better at when it comes just to the bare minimum of play-by-play. And it's he also does something else that I absolutely hate, and he uses the pronoun we when talking about the St. Louis Cardinals. And I'm just like, you're not playing. You're not playing. Like, and you're the announcer, and you need to be able to call it the way that you see it. Like someone like Mike Shannon could say we because he was a St. Louis Cardinal. Like I would even tolerate it from Ricky Horton, who I dislike and have no respect for, because he was a St. Louis Cardinal. Like, okay, like I don't like when announcers do that, but you were one of them. Like you are one of them. Like you're an alumnus. You can say that. But like Chip Carey isn't a St. Louis Cardinal. He can't play Major League Baseball. And he's a play-by-play guy. And when you're out there saying we, when you're talking about the team, I feel like you are a company man who's not giving it to me straight. And I don't think that Chip Carey calls the game straight either. Like, I don't think we will ever hear him, criticize the Cardinals in a meaningful way during a broadcast. And I know that's kind of going the way of the dinosaur as some of the more legacy guys leave. But like I'm even just talking about like, pointing out when they have a bad game and holding them accountable for it, like, or make a bad play. And I feel like he barely even does that. And I'm just looking at it, and when I am listening to him, I feel like he is not even paying attention to the game. That's actually how I feel, and it really irritates me.
So Ben, here's what I think the problem is you are paying attention to him. That's something
Oh
that I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
do. Like
That's
it's like I said, to me it's like idle business chatter at a Rotary meeting or something. It's just there. It's just in the air. It's fine. So maybe that's why it doesn't bother me as much as it bothers you. But yeah, I don't know. It's I certainly wouldn't mind seeing seeing some changes there. But
there was a wonderful
yeah,
period of time early in the year with the new app, Ben, when if I had my TV at a certain volume because it was such a terrible broadcast production-wise, that I couldn't really hear them. Like I could hear the stadium noise as much as them, and it was just like sitting next to a couple of clowns at a game. Like you can just tune them out. But they've upped the production, like the volume of their voices on the production of the broadcast, and it's really obnoxious.
Well, the other thing I'll say though is like it's their job is hard right now to like do all of these meaningless games, and I certainly think it's all of the just kind of like where they're just talking bullshit for like 3 innings straight. Yeah. Like I agree. There's like too much of that. But then part of me is like, well, what do I want him to talk about here? Like Andre Palante is pitching this inning, like, and I noticed that too, like just when I click over to teams like the Marlins and their broadcast teams and stuff, and just these, people that have to watch like nothing good. It gets a
and
little
look,
tough there
I
too.
also want to be clear. Like if it's a blowout game, whatever, man. Like I'm not, it's totally grading on a curve at that point, right? Like if you know, and some of the most enjoyable, like actually my old practice was if it was a blowout one way or the other, I would often no longer watch on television and just turn Mike Shannon on for the things that you're talking about. But it's also like a guy who's genuinely entertaining and endearing. And then Chip Carey, who's the most grating, try-hard, obnoxious kid in your 8th grade class. The class clown. Chip Carey is the class clown, and now he's the class clown on a broadcast, and it's terrible.
Did Chip Carey run over your dog? I think I have to ask this because C70 is going to ask us.
No,
this
he ran
next
over
week.
my Cardinals broadcast, which,
right.
like, and I'm not. The other thing is like. And I just find it unbelievable. With the pitch clock and how short the games are, how is it that you can't just fill it with innocuous observations about baseball?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting. I know, I think I've told Vince Scully, I know in an interview talked about like when he was very, very early in his broadcasting career, and like he brought like notebooks, full of kind of like notes up there with him. And I forget who the old timey guy he was working with was, but they said to him, "The game's out there." And so, and that was something that that was his thing was he really spent a lot of time describing like everything that was happening on the field and whatnot. Now, he was a vestige from a bygone era, so like you can't really do that anymore. But and of course he worked alone. But yeah, there might be other ways of being in the world. But
but what Scully also did, Ben, is he put in the prep. Okay, he didn't need the notebooks anymore, right? Like he went up there and he knew it. I feel like, and he would just work things in like anecdotes, and I'm sure that he had notes, but like, he had things, but he wasn't. It also feels like we get like a talking point dump from the Cardinals booth that the producers feed them, and I think what Scully, who it's totally unfair to compare any of these guys to Scully, but he was very good. Like he had a 3-game series. And he was good at deploying the facts when they were appropriate. And he might not deploy them in that 3-game series because it wasn't appropriate to deploy this set of facts. And he would wait until the next one when this situation in the game fits this fact. And I just like, now we just get Brad's dog and, talking about 90s movies from the 1990s and just like all this stuff. And I'm just like, you're not funny, you're not clever, and you're not good broadcasters. Like maybe you should just be quiet. I really wish that FanDuel Midwest, like some of the European soccer broadcasts used to have a thing where you could just listen to the stadium noise. And I know that would be very, very quiet in Busch Stadium this year, but I would like to just sit there and watch the game and not listen to anyone if these are my options.
You can put your TV on mute, and I'm sure your phone has like some nice like ambient sounds or things like that. So that might be the way to go.
I could put on the "Here Comes the King" repeated playlist from opening day.
I honestly, Ben, like announcer chatter has always been just kind of ambient sound to me. Like I just don't. It's there, but I don't really plug into it, and so just to wrap it up, that's where I just getting back to your game watching buddies versus your analysis. I don't mind the game watching buddies system because it's less in my face than the analysis guys. Like I have a hard time doing that when I'm watching John Smoltz, because John Smoltz is like arguing things like that are actively stupid and like insisting on them. And like I can't disagree. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't care about Brad's dog, but like that's fine. Brad's talking about his dog. So anyway, we could probably go on for way too long. Maybe we have already on the broadcast, but thanks again to everybody for all the questions. Again, kind of a low ebb of the season. Always nice to have this much engagement. Ben, as we do wind into the home stretch here, what are you going to be looking for?
Well, we are recording this during the game on August 21st due to our respective schedules. And I just bring that up because I'm going to give you a quiz, and I recognize that you already have shared one of these. So I'm going to start with that one. What is Alec Burleson's Fangraphs wins above replacement entering play tonight? Well,
I do know for a fact that right now it's 1.4, at least as of when I looked earlier tonight.
What is Pedro Pajez's?
I'm going to guess 1.4.
Actually, it's 1.3. What I discovered this fact this week, how close they were. And I was really hoping by the time that we recorded they would be tied. It did not work out that way. But they are very, very close. Like they could be tied after the game tonight or after the game on Friday night. And so for the rest of the year, I am going to be watching this wins above replacement race because they're two players who give you their value in completely opposite ways. Pajes is on defense. And keep in mind, this doesn't really take into account how you handle pitchers and call pitches. So Pedro Pages has been more valuable than Alec Burleson at this point in time.
Yes.
It's just not recorded in wins above replacement, or reflected in wins above replacement. And Alec Burleson gives you no value, negative value on the bases, negative value on defense. It's all with the bat. So I'm going to watch with great interest to see who finishes the year with more wins above replacement, and how this is viewed, because there's kind of been some rumblings where it's like, hey, Pages should not play as much. But I haven't heard as much of that about Burleson. But they've basically been the same player, just in different ways. And so I'm very interested to see if the defense first catcher can outperform the offense only bat by the end of the year, and how, if at all, that impacts perception of each player when we enter the offseason.
Yeah, well, it's definitely an interesting comparison between those. So I will look forward to following that with you. Ben, I'm going to be watching, today as people listen to this, I'll probably watch a little bit of the Iowa State Cyclones playing football in Ireland. So that's happening. And actually, before our next podcast that we will record, actually our next podcast is going to drop on the opening day of the National Football League season, Ben. So I'm going to be honest, I'll probably watch some football in the coming weeks, because it's on, and the Cardinals season is so great. But if I had to pick something Cardinals related, which I feel like I probably should, because this is a Cardinals podcast, I think last time I had mentioned that Jeff Jones had kind of reported out that around like August 14th was kind of, likely the date that players called up wouldn't accrue or wouldn't burn a year of team control with their playing time this season. So I kind of pointed that out and said, hey, this could be a date that we saw, particularly like a Weatherholt call up, something they had done, previously with Wynn and other players. Felt like it might make some sense. They didn't do that, right? So now I'm going to be watching for September 1st, which is going to happen before our next podcast, Ben. And I'm kind of curious to see what the Cardinals do there. They do get to add 2 players with the new rules in September. So I think the exciting version of this is they bring up Weatherholt and they give him a week run. And I think for the pitcher, I think it would be interesting if they brought Quinn Matthews up and did the same thing, right? Both of those cases, as we talked about earlier, are guys who they, hope, and I think in Weatherholt's case, like pretty much assume will be, kind of core parts of their team from opening day next year. So it would be really interesting to see those guys get a little bit of a run here. I definitely think it's possible. I think it's far from certain, though. To be honest, on the position player side, I almost wonder if they might bring Jimmy Crooks up, because I think the Pages Pozo tandem, I don't think we're going to see them run that back next year. And with all the kind of line of catchers they have in the minor leagues, I think they might crack into that a little bit more. And of course, on the pitching side, they can always just, bring back, whatever, reliever jobber is, still down in, Memphis. So, like a Roycroft or somebody comes back up like that. So that's, that's probably the more likely thing. But I certainly think there's still a decent chance that we see some of the prospects, and that would certainly make September a lot more fun.
Yeah, and I think Matthews is a interesting name to bring up. As you have mentioned, he's had injuries, so he's only in the 70s in terms of innings pitched, and so you're looking at, if you want him to build up his innings, how do you do that? And to me, it makes sense to give him that major league kind of tryout at the end of the year to do that.
Yeah, and he's also left-handed, so if you want him to have a taste of the majors, but in the bullpen, it makes a lot more sense to do that with a left-hand. Like, you can always use a left-handed guy in the bullpen. So, So anyway, that's what I'm going to be watching for. Ben, anything else before we wrap things up for folks?
No, I would tell people enjoy the kickoff to the football season as an alternative to the sinking Cardinals, but also, the days are starting to get cooler and shorter, and we've only got like 5 weeks of baseball left. So I would also encourage folks to kind of drink that in and enjoy it before the cold weather hits.
I think that's good advice. Thanks as always to Devont for the music, to Dan for helping us out with social media and the questions and everything. We will be back with you on September 4th on the next Cardinals Off Day. We'll see you then.
Go Cardinals!